When skin color becomes a reason to be expelled from the sky's paradise? The head flight attendant's voice rang out, sharp and commanding like a military order midair. This is my final warning. If you do not move to the rear cabin, I will be forced to call security. The atmosphere in the cabin nearly froze. Every word Heather spoke seemed nailed into the air, cold and sharp, yet cloaked in the disguise of rules and customer service. Alara, a black woman dressed in a navy blue suit, remained eerily calm. She looked up, her eyes steady and unwavering. I already said, I won't move. Her voice wasn't loud, wasn't shaky, but there was something magnetic in each word, as if the very space itself paused to listen. No one knew that the woman they looked at with suspicion was actually a silent shareholder in the very airline they were flying. But Alara had never needed to flaunt power to prove her existence. A flagship Skylux Air International flight waited at Gate 7 under the golden afternoon light, promising luxury and exclusivity in the skies. Inside the first-class cabin, ambient lighting shimmered across individual pods lined with Italian leather, each equipped with lie-flat beds, gold-trimmed privacy doors, and champagne flutes gently clinking in curated silence. Passengers glided through like living symbols of entitlement. Designer shoes, luxury watches, eyes trained to distinguish us and them. Alara boarded quietly, not demanding attention, yet somehow still drawing it. Heather, the head flight attendant, known for knowing every VIP by heart, stood near the entryway, face perfectly made up, posture never bowed. She smiled at each passenger, every smile calibrated by credit score and skin tone. When Alara approached, Heather glanced quickly and raised an eyebrow. Welcome. Just 2 words colder than the 64-degree air conditioning in the cabin. But when a white couple, the Raymonds, boarded behind Alara, Heather's smile suddenly lit up like a switch had been flipped. So lovely to see you again. Martini as usual? Alara, standing seconds before, saw everything, but she didn't react. Her eyes simply retreated like a silent camera, recording every detail. When Alara took her seat in Suite 1A, a front-row private pod reserved for top-tier elite members, Heather approached again, this time with a fabricated concern about a seat assignment error. I think you're in the wrong section, she said, her smile just polite enough not to be called rude. Alara wasn't surprised. My ticket says 1A. My name is on the list. Heather didn't bother checking. Her eyes scanned like a biometric scanner. Skin tone, hairstyle, no wedding ring, cheap watch. This suite is reserved for chairman tier members only. Perhaps you've misread your ticket. Not clear enough? For her, Alara's skin color was persuasion enough. A few passengers started to take notice. A middle-aged man adjusted his glasses and muttered, "See? Always someone trying to sneak into this cabin without paying full fare." A white woman sneered, "Probably thinks wearing a suit is enough." Alara didn't turn, but she heard it all. Heather had now completely shed her service mask. "If you don't move voluntarily, I will call security to escort you off the aircraft. This is your final opportunity." Her voice wasn't loud, but loud enough for everyone on board to hear. The cabin thickened, ready to ignite. An Asian passenger near Alara looked over, concerned, about to say something, but stopped. The silence now resembled a hidden courtroom. No judge, only bias enforcing its own rules. Alara tilted her head slightly, her face composed. "Call whoever you need to call, but I won't leave this seat." Her words came out soft as wind but sharp as blades, slicing through the silence of the cabin. A quiet gasp escaped from a middle-aged woman in the front row, her hand frozen midair. A suited man nearby leaned slightly, eyes sharp as if anticipating what was to come. Heather could no longer maintain her poise. Her face flushed, jaw clenched, fists tightening around her clipboard. She snapped toward Maya, the young flight attendant nearby, pale as paper, eyes uncertain. "Maya!" Heather's tone cracked like a slap. "Escort her to the back, now!" Maya froze. She looked at Alara, still seated calmly, hands on her lap, gaze unwavering. Maya wanted to say something, just something simple like, maybe check the list first. But Heather's eyes came down like a hammer, making her lips tremble. Finally, she nodded faintly and stepped forward, reluctant. Alara turned slightly, her voice low, almost a whisper. "You'd better think carefully about what you're doing." Not a threat, a warning, with weight. Heather scoffed, arrogant. "I don't need to think. I know exactly what I'm doing. Now stand up." The sound of air vents howled like sirens in everyone's heads. No one moved. No one spoke. Elara still didn't rise. She leaned her head back slightly, eyes locked on Heather. "You shouldn't judge people by appearances." Heather narrowed her eyes, lips curling. "And you shouldn't sit in a seat you didn't pay for." Elara said nothing more. She calmly picked up her phone, typed a few quick words, then placed it on the armrest. "You're making a very serious mistake." Heather rolled her eyes. "Let's see who's really making the mistake." She motioned to Maya again, but this time Maya didn't move. Instead, she walked over to the passenger list near the cockpit. Her finger trembled as she scanned the column of names. Each name felt like a heartbeat pounding in her chest. Finally, she stopped at row 1A. Before she could say a word, Heather turned around, her voice sharp. "Maya, what do you think you're doing?" Maya flinched and turned back. "I was just..." "Stay out of it," Heather snapped, her voice like a whip. "I can handle this." Maya stepped back, biting her lip, her eyes welling up with tears, but she said nothing more. As the tension peaked, a man in a charcoal suit and pale gray tie leaned forward from the seat across from Elara. "Excuse me, are you all right?" Elara turned to him. Her gaze softened, and her voice was calm but firm. "I'm fine. Thank you." Heather immediately stepped in, hand raised as if to block interference. "Sir, I advise you not to support this disruption." She pointed straight at Elara, her voice sharp. "She is disturbing the peace." The man frowned, his voice low and razor sharp. "From where I sit, the one disturbing the peace is you." A shockwave, silent but powerful, rippled through the cabin. Heather's face turned crimson. She turned back to Elara like she needed a final place to unload her rage. "I've run out of patience. Either you leave this seat, or I'll call security to drag you off the plane." Elara locked eyes with Heather, unblinking. "Go ahead and try." Heather was nearly unhinged. She leaned down close to Elara, her voice a hiss, sharp as a blade. "Why can't you just admit you're wrong and stop bothering everyone?" Elara said nothing. Her calm gaze was a slap in the form of silence. Heather stormed down the aisle like a hurricane, her polished heels thudding against the carpet. She grabbed a tray of drinks, pretending to resume service as if nothing had happened, but her tense expression betrayed her emotions. Elara remained seated, eyes glancing over a page in her book, but not truly reading. Heather stopped at the Raymond's row, pouring water and smiling brightly as though nothing had transpired. Then she walked past Elara as if she didn't exist. No eye contact, no greeting. With the tray nearly empty, Elara spoke, her voice light as air. "Excuse me, may I have a glass of water?" Heather paused. Her frost-bitten eyes glanced at Elara for a moment before muttering, "I'll come back when I have time." She walked off, the tray tilting in her hand, without pouring a single glass. Elara watched her go, her face unchanged, but her hand lightly clenched on the armrest. A few minutes later, Elara stretched her legs out naturally, crossing them lightly. Heather returned, still carrying the tray, her eyes scanning like infrared over every motion. Instead of saying anything, she deliberately altered her path. Her foot struck Elara's leg, and the tray tilted. Water spilled onto the floor in Elara's lap. Heather immediately shouted, "Oh my God, watch your leg, you made me spill everything." The cabin jolted again. A passenger sighed. Elara looked up, water still glistening on her pant leg. "My leg didn't move. You walked into me." She spoke slowly, not angry, but each word nailed down like iron. She tilted her head, her eyes fixed on Heather. "I only asked to be treated fairly. If that's too much to ask, then maybe you're the one who doesn't belong here." The air felt vacuum-sealed, a sentence as soft as breath, yet cold as a blade slicing through Heather's proud armor. Her face burned red. This wasn't ordinary anger. It was the fury of someone whose authority had just been challenged by someone she deemed unworthy. She charged toward Elara, now only a step away. "You think you have the right to talk to me like that?" She growled, every word cracking with rage. And then, the slap came suddenly, brutally. The sound of skin on skin cracked through the cabin like a whip in a church. A collective gasp erupted. Seats rattled. A passenger dropped his glass of water. The businessman from earlier stood up so fast his seat creaked. Maya covered her mouth with both hands, eyes wide as if she had just witnessed a car crash. The woman in front gaped, her once curious face now twisted in shock. Ilara didn't flinch. She slowly lifted her head, hands still resting on her thigh, eyes locked on Heather. The air turned thick as ice in summer. Ilara sat upright, not in defense, but like someone who was used to giving orders. Her voice wasn't loud or sharp, but cut like a knife sheathed in silk. "You've just made the biggest mistake of your life." She tilted her head, gaze unwavering. "I've been silent long enough, but your actions have crossed the line I can no longer ignore." Heather clenched her jaw, her fists balled tight, tendons visible beneath the skin. "Cross the line? You're accusing me? You're the one causing a disturbance on this flight, not me." Ilara didn't touch her cheek. No tears, no harsh words. She simply straightened a bit more. Her eyes were bright, calm, like a lake after a stone had been thrown. "You will regret this," she said, not as a threat, but with the weight of undeniable truth. Heather hesitated, as if yanked out of a trance of authority. Something in Ilara's gaze planted a seed of doubt. Heather laughed coldly, forced. "Regret? For slapping you? Are you going to call your lawyer now?" Ilara said nothing, but her silence pierced the air, making those nearby hold their breath. No one saw Ilara as the weaker one anymore. No one believed Heather was still in control. At the back of the cabin, Maya clutched her phone. She was no longer the timid flight attendant from before. Her eyes now filled with conflict, but also resolve. She quietly turned away, slipping behind the curtain and dialing. Her hand trembled slightly, but her voice didn't. "This is Maya. I'm calling from Flight 497. We have a serious incident involving violent behavior by the head flight attendant. I request immediate action upon landing." When she returned to her position, Heather was still standing there. But her stance was no longer steady. Ilara sat still, back straight, hands on her lap, eyes forward. The cabin was silent, like a theater awaiting its climax. A passenger whispered, "Are you all right?" Ilara turned slightly, a faint smile on her lips. "I'm fine. Thank you." Heather looked back at Ilara, fury still in her eyes. Ilara spoke slowly, clearly. "I ask for nothing but respect, but you denied me that, not for any reason, but because of my skin color." The plane's engine noise seemed to amplify. Ilara's words echoed like a final bell. Heather clenched her teeth. "Respect? You should know your place before you ask for that. People like you will never have my respect." The sentence cast a cold fog over the cabin. Several passengers exchanged glances, their expressions troubled and uneasy. By now, Ilara no longer tried to remain neutral. Her voice was sharp but controlled. "You shouldn't have said that." Heather crossed her arms, speaking like issuing a sentence. "Now you'll understand the consequences of overstepping." Ilara narrowed her eyes, still seated. "I agree. And you're about to learn the consequences of crossing a line you were never meant to touch." Heather faltered, suspicion creeping in. She glanced around for support, but the passenger's eyes were no longer on her side. She threw out one last line like a lifeline. "I'm not afraid of empty threats." Ilara didn't respond, but Heather felt like an invisible cage was tightening around her. She began to wonder, what if she's not who I thought she was? Ilara hadn't yelled, hadn't erupted, only remained calm, solid as a stone. The way she spoke, the way she sat, the way she looked her straight in the eye without blinking. Heather began to recall every detail. Why hadn't Ilara once reacted with force? Why did she carry herself like someone higher than the captain himself? And then, like a cold wind down her spine, she realized she had just made a terrible mistake. Heather scanned the cabin, desperately searching for an approving glance, like a drowning person grasping for straw. But this time, no one defended her. The businessman across the aisle, once calmly observing, now sat with arms folded, eyes cold, as if awaiting judgment. The gossiping woman whispered to her companion, her face no longer smug, but disappointed and awkward. And Maya? Her fingers trembled as she still held the passenger list, as though clutching a piece of criminal evidence. Meanwhile, Alara remained seated, her face composed, unaffected. She crossed her legs, leaned back in her seat with a poise so chilling, it felt like she was the one waiting for an apology. No shouting, no outburst. But Alara's silence was the strongest accusation. And Heather understood that all too well. The air in the cabin was thick, like heat sealed in a locked room. Heather tried to regain control, but the more she circled Alara, the more it felt like she was walking on thin ice. That line, "You've made a mistake," echoed in her ears like a nightmare's chime. Heather didn't know that Alara had sent a short message. No plea for help, no complaint, but a trigger, a silent signal. Not surrender, but a cue for consequences. Heather paced the aisle like a caged animal, while Alara sat like she was in her own office. Not a hair out of place, not a single muscle tensed, only eyes calmly watching Heather, like a teacher waiting for a student to realize the lesson. Alara opened her phone, her movements discreet, but a quiet energy radiated from her. Heather noticed and instinctively turned. "What are you doing?" she asked, voice sharper than necessary. Alara didn't look up immediately. She typed a final line, placed her phone on the armrest and looked forward. "You'll know soon enough." A simple sentence, but it struck Heather's deepest fear like a hammer to glass. The cabin grew eerily quiet. The engine hum now throbbed like a war drum. Passengers whispered, "Who is she?" "I don't think she's just anyone." The businessman tapped his armrest rhythmically, eyes fixed on Alara, as if confirming a theory. A few minutes later, the cockpit door opened, soundlessly pulling the sky with it. The captain stepped out, face visibly tense. He didn't look at Heather, but straight at Alara, then turned to Heather curtly. "We need to speak." Privately, Heather frowned, taking a half step back but clinging to composure. "I'm handling this situation. Why should I—" The captain cut her off, voice firm. "I just received a signal from operations. A high-level executive is on board." Heather stepped back again, face paling. "You mean who?" The captain took a breath, then addressed the entire cabin. "Miss Alara Benton, the legal owner of this aircraft and the head of our airline." The words struck like a thunderclap. Some passengers froze. A few gasped. The gossipy woman exclaimed, "Oh my God!" Forgetting her manners, the businessman smiled knowingly and nodded. "I knew it." Maya, still clutching the list, now lowered her hands slowly, eyes glistening, but with relief. Heather stood motionless, lips pale. No, she's just—" But no one agreed. Only the sound of beating hearts remained, until Alara rose from her seat. She adjusted her collar and swept her gaze across the cabin. Her face was sharp as a blade. No longer a passenger, but a woman who had once shaken government boardrooms. "I am Alara Benton." Her voice wasn't loud, but rang like a bell in the night. "I'm a majority shareholder of Skylux Air, and yes, I personally approved the purchase of this aircraft model for our international fleet." Heather's mouth hung open. Everything around her spiraled into a crushing vortex. She tried to speak, but no sound came. Alara turned to the captain. "I want this incident addressed immediately, and I want to ensure that no passenger, regardless of skin color, ever has to endure this again." The captain nodded respectfully. "Yes, Miss Benton." Heather took a step back, lips tightly pressed, forehead beaded with sweat. Panic surged through her like a wave. She glanced toward the emergency exit, instinct telling her to flee. But as she moved, the captain's voice cut like ice. "You'll remain here, right where you are." She froze. Alara now stood tall, gaze sharp as a blade. "Heather, your actions today not only violated ethical standards, they breached legal boundaries. Effective immediately, you are terminated." The declaration hit like lightning. Heather stumbled, stepping back as if lost. No, please, Miss Benton," she whispered. I didn't think it would go this far." Alara remained brutally calm. "You didn't think you'd get caught, did you? But you were seen, and now you'll face the consequences." Just then, Two airport security officers boarded the plane in Navy uniforms, demeanor stern. The cabin stirred. A passenger whispered, "Are those the police?" "Miss Benton," one officer said, "we received your emergency call. Would you like to press criminal charges?" Ilara nodded without hesitation. "I would. The assault took place in front of multiple witnesses. I request full legal proceedings." Heather reeled, tears threatening. "Wait, please, that's not what happened. I lost control. I didn't mean to." The officer stepped forward, pulling out handcuffs. "Ma'am, you are under arrest for assaulting a passenger. Anything you say may be used in court." Heather gasped, her whole body trembling. She looked at Ilara, the woman she once tried to humiliate, now standing like a monument, unbroken. The storm had come, and Heather knew it wouldn't pass quickly. No one laughed. No one commented. Each person watched silently as Heather was handcuffed, her tear-streaked face devoid of the arrogance she once wore. Ilara stood motionless, observing coldly. "An apology can't erase the consequences," she said steadily. "You chose to treat me that way, and today the truth has come to light." A passenger murmured, "That's not punishment, that's justice." Ilara turned toward the cabin. Her voice rang, not loud, but rich like a bronze bell. "I'm sorry that you all had to witness something that should never have happened. We may be a luxury airline, but more important than luxury is human dignity. From now on, I will ensure no one, no matter who they are or how they look, ever feels like a stranger in the skies they helped build." Applause broke out. Mr. Raymond nodded. Mrs. Raymond let her yarn fall, eyes shining with emotion. Ilara turned to Maya, the young attendant who had stood quietly like a shadow throughout. Her voice softened. "Maya, I saw the integrity in your eyes. Thank you for not turning away. HR will be in touch soon, about a position more fitting for someone like you." Maya froze, eyes wide, clipboard still in hand. "Thank you. Miss Benton." Ilara smiled, then walked away, her posture unshaken, like no scars had ever been inflicted on her spirit. The cabin was different now. No more curious glances or stony faces, only respect and quiet. Justice had arrived, not through power, but through the unyielding resolve of a black woman far too used to being underestimated. A passenger whispered, afraid to disturb the sacred stillness. "She's living proof. No one has the right to define another person's worth by the color of their skin." Ilara turned slightly, her smile light as morning sun. "Thank you, and remember, to stay silent in the face of injustice is to aid it."